Welcome to Concurrency's Business Survival Kit webinar series. We're glad that you are here. We recognize that this has been a long journey for a lot of us, a journey from transitioning away from our offices to our homes, a journey to understanding the impact of our business, and a journey to returning to our business. And inside of this context, a lot of things happening inside of our community. And we realize that a lot of that has impact on you and impact on us. So we're going to continue with our webinar series today in the context that we understand that this is a business climate and a personal climate that's impacting all of us. And we're going to use this particular webinar as an opportunity to be able to look back on some of the aspects of Smart Restart and how companies have, despite the challenges, continue to move back into a position where they're helping their business help serve its mission in the community, its mission in the world. And we're going to talk about it also in the context of, what are some of the things that we've learned through this process that have helped companies grow and succeed. And we recognize that as we talk about it, we're doing so in a context where people are reacting personally in their Smart Restart, reacting personally with a lot of things that are going on in our community. So we're appreciative that you're here, and we're appreciative that we have the opportunity to be able to continue on in this series with you. Today, we're continuing on with our guests that we've had over the last several weeks. Again, my name is Nathan Lesnowski. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Concurrency. Been with Concurrency for 19 years and have been blessed to experience how companies have responded in the last 3 months, and even how companies respond in the last several weeks to the challenging climate, both personally and professionally. And looking forward to now introduce Swami Venkatesh, who is data scientist with Concurrency. Welcome again, Swami, to our presentation this week.
Thanks, Nate. It's really great to join the conversation once again. And as a data scientist, I look forward to bringing in ideas how to implement AI, ML, and make businesses more focused on achieving their goals.
Thanks, Swami. And then we also have Damon Sanchez, who is a UX architect, who's a great member of our team, has been on several of the previous webinars. Welcome again, Damon.
Thank you, Nate, for having me. Glad to be here and to help work through this material with everybody on the line. Thank you.
Awesome, Damon. Thank you. And then finally, we have Anthony, who has also been on several of the previous webinars, a great asset to our team, and has some great experiences to talk about today. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Nate, for having me. Happy to talk about the Power Platform.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. So over the last several weeks, we've covered what Smart Restart has looked like for many of our customers throughout 3 different stages. This included the stage of engaging your people in what returning to work or even engaging in work in a more complete way looks like through awareness, planning, testing, reporting, crisis engagement, and so on. It's been an opportunity to really talk about how we bring an empathetic approach and a understanding approach, a concerned approach, a complete approach to the way we think about the relationship that our company has with the employees that make up who we are as an organization. The second is about operations. We talked about how companies are needing to run and execute their businesses in a different way. Even now, 2-3 weeks later after we started a Smart Restart, many companies are less than 2% full in the information worker space. Maybe they're fully full in the manufacturing space. They're trying to navigate that. They're also trying to navigate the demand, inventory, supply chain process, look and understand how they can most optimize the finite resources they have at their disposal. Also thinking about how security plays into that story. So the operations story has been something we spent time on. And then also the relationship with customers and how customers have been impacted and have new ways of engaging and doing business than what that business looked like before. You could have thought that companies would return to doing business the way they had originally in a different circumstance. But in this circumstance, we're seeing people have adapted to the way they may have been now engaging companies during COVID, and they may not readapt back. Perhaps you now have to meet them in a different way and continue meeting them in that new way. And the old way of engaging them is no longer a need because they have changed the way that they prefer to interact. So this Smart Restart ecosystem has brought a lot of learnings, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is all of this in the context of each other. And especially one of the asks I had for this team this week was, what's your best of? You know, what's the thing that you felt over the last 3 weeks you've seen companies adopt, use, adjust, and iterate on? And how do we take advantage of that to be able to provide the best experience for all of these stakeholders? So we'll cover those 3 stories. And then next week, we're moving out of our Smart Restart webinar and our COVID focus into a very a topical focus week to week, which we'd absolutely encourage everyone who's been on the Smart Restart webinars to come and attend. And next week, we're particularly going to talk about Teams as a platform inside the context of how it should drive the community and project engagement within your organization beyond just the idea that we're on conference calls. And this is even more important as we talk about Smart Restart, because the idea of Teams as a platform isn't just about what's better. Am I on a Zoom call or a Teams call, and which has the better voice quality or video quality? It's not about that. It's about the extent to which that conversation carries into collaborative work by driving a productive platform through process automation and Teams as an app experience that brings full party and low code technology into that conversation. So that's going to be a really interesting webinar. Looking forward to having a varying degree of conversations there throughout that ecosystem. So thank you for transitioning into that conversation. I think it's going to be fascinating. So let's get right into talking about 4 different scenarios that, as we've looked back the last 3 weeks, have been really meaningful to our customers. One has been the temp testing application. I don't think I've seen something that has quite hit the market the way that this needed to, and had such customer demand regarding talking about how to accomplish this goal, even with very different approaches. And I think that's something Anthony and Damon are really going to talk about. Also, the idea of transitioning that into touchless testing, then movement into things like the Smart Restart bot, and then finally customer engagement and a lot of the work around natural language processing to be able to change and optimize the customer interaction pre-engaging a human has been something that has just exploded as we've been having these conversations. So a lot of interesting things to talk about today. So let's dive into that. At the end of the day, this is about creating strategic change within our customers, enabling points of differentiation while hitting them where they now have a point of parity, where that point of satisfaction may have been down here before. It's been raised up into this space, now in a point where this is where we need to meet our customers, because they're going to continue moving this direction. They will not continue down this curve. So our conversation today is about how do we not only meet these initial goals, but also drive into the point of differentiation that is now not just a point of differentiation, it's a point of parity. So Anthony and Damon, let's talk a little bit about how the story of that platforms you've built, and especially the temperature testing scenario, has driven into, how it's iterated, how it's changed, how it's met the customer, and what your experiences have been in the last 3 weeks around these platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just diving right here with this specific screenshot of the app itself is being able to put this out there. People understand that there's a solution for it, and then it taking wings by itself. So at each, like you mentioned earlier, there's a need at every organization for different types of things. What I think this has really shown is how expandable the Power Platform is, And then within the last 30 days, I would say, we've seen this go in a variety of ways, whether it's this being a part of a visitor log or this being part of a broader process. Being able to understand what's there now and then expanding on that. And we're really seeing this go in many different directions. So specifically here, you're going to see, with that app that we were just showing, multilingual, the check-in process, and being able to drive those in different ways. And then doing that real time with the client, I think is important. We have this app here where it's talking through, that new normal. I think that the COVID app or the screening app is important, and that's going to, stay around for, let's say, the next 18 months. But this app here it might be even around a little bit longer than that, because it's that staging that you're going back to work. It's understanding who's in the building and how many people are in the building, and then how efficient you can be to start to plan those things. So I see a bit of a balance here where now that we've implemented many of those screening apps, now I see them shifting that they want to now include this. So it's more of those informational workers going back and then creating that new norm.
Even the question of like, who's in the building today, like super interesting, right? Like planning I'm going to the office. How many people are going to be there today? Should I go try to find them? Should I be walking around the office? And Damon, you were going to say something.
Oh, I think what you're seeing on screen too is just the idea of transitioning for devices. We're not trying to usurp tablets and laptops and desktops, but the idea that, during the smart restart phase, maybe someone gets up and goes to the break room and they can take their phone with them, and they have this sort of extension, or we've extended the tools that they would get normally just in their pocket. They also aren't touching a screen that someone else might have touched, so they're able to interact on top of a layer of technology that's already there. It's pretty important.
I completely agree, and I think it's that side of things where empathy makes you a better innovator, where you take what you have now as technology, but then evolving that with the people and moving that along as you see those evolutions happen, and doing that in an iterative approach. So specifically with that app, I could see that just being when we start going back to the office, which is actually coming up here pretty soon, just being able to do that in this approach where it makes sense for us, and then doing that alongside and building the technology with the people, versus just having this technology out there that everybody has to just glue to and make work for themselves. That's not how it should be. Oops, sorry.
I was just going to say, and then this also transitioned that same. I think one of the things we've seen from this has been that as companies have started using Power Platform to do very, very important, blocking or tackling apps or awareness apps, we've seen them drive that through Center of Excellence or awareness into doing process automation like what you have here.
Exactly, and I this app, and then there's another app that we're going to show as well. But seeing that process, come in different areas where you had to hand papers off to each other, you had to have a lot of like back and forth to understand the status, or follow a paper trail to figure out, who has this invoice or who's approving it next. Being able to put that into a standardized process and moving that forward with, process automation. This is really where you're going to see transparency in a company. People are going to understand where it is in the workflow, and then you're going to be able to talk specifically with those people and create that collaboration that you're looking for. This being an invoice optimization, app, I think that these are just small buckets that a lot of companies, are using, and those are the apps that we brought here today. But there's so many more, different ways that we can adjust this, and I just see, even this app going a long way. And then we also have this app where it's part of a nonprofit. This was more of a holistic solution where, it was tracking inventory that they were using at different areas, who was checking in at specific areas, including the employees, including the volunteers, and then eventually wanted to track more things. And that's just getting into understanding the whole flow of a process and being able to do all of that within Power Apps and hand-holding along the way. Again, it's that empathy. You see a lot of that here with, there's background information that's going on there, whether it's changing the language, it's the images that are coming forward. It's really building a process around the people rather than, again, using that technology and just throwing it out there and hoping that, people know how to use it.
And maybe back to this idea around the temperature testing app. One of the things that I think we've seen, even in a conversation this morning, was what questions are we asking, on these inputs. Different companies seem to be asking different things, aren't they?
Yeah, and again, this morning was an example of that, where they just wanted an on-off switch. Are you experiencing symptoms or not? That's not the first time that we've actually heard that. There was another company that has 25,000 employees, where they're looking for a solution that's is that person experiencing anything, yes or no, and if so, let's dive into that a little bit deeper, and then that's part of a separate process. So being able to just get people through the door and not deviating from the standard process is also part of this user journey. We want to make sure that whatever we're putting in front of somebody, it makes sense for that company, and being able to be flexible in that sense.
Well, I think that idea of flexibility, and then the previous slide, there was a bullet that said no code, low code, low code, no code, and that idea of that just sort of keys into that rapid application development. We're here as in an iterative process. We've
Right.
got certain certain processes in place where we can help our clients go through that journey. And maybe the application that we have on screen was version 1.0. It was good enough as an MVP to get through the door, but even you mentioned, Nate, that sort of no touch sort of phase. That's version 2. It's something that they found that this worked. It worked well, and now they can keep building on top of it with previous iterations.
That's a really interesting thing that you bring up there, Damon, because I think that the transition we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years in the low code, no code space has been, or what you might say the RPA, the robotic process automation or process optimization space, has been from a movement from these platforms that talked about being commodity, but really ultimately ran big internal projects to do process automation, to this rapid application development oriented approach to process automation that we saw even accelerated faster with COVID, where immediate needs came up. And it wasn't a 4-month project. It was a 2-week or a 1-week project to get something ready to respond.
And I think Microsoft, actually speaking to that a little bit, Microsoft even recognizes that this is a low code, no code solution. This is something that you're going to bring to market quickly. You're going to see value out of it really fast. Within the last couple of weeks, they've launched a new function within Power Apps that you can launch one app, and have that open, and then you can click a button inside that app that launches a second app. So you're going to be able to tie these apps together seamlessly, so that you're not going to leave that environment at all. It's going to feel like you're all in the same app. But the reason why they're doing that is because they recognize the low code, no code solution. This is going to be able to bring, these separate, let's say, processes together as one big solution that's going to make it holistic for that end user.
Awesome. Damon, you want to talk a little bit about just the idea of what how we're ending or engaging with this? This isn't just like a flat screen, right? We want to engage.
Right. I mean, and this was a screen that, once the temperature screening process was finished, it was a thank you screen that we added into the tablet that, using the accelerometer could be flipped around, and then, to the person who was getting the screening done, we just, we said, hey, look, we appreciate you. We understand where, this might be tough. You might be going through something right now, and we're trying to get that sort of empathetical attachment in the application. And here we're talking to the person on the other side of the screen with that sort of colloquial language, that sort of natural language, and it goes a long way. What we found in application development is just bringing that humanistic approach.
Awesome. Thank you, Damon. Thank you, Anthony. I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk with Swami about how we've seen bots be used specifically in customer scenarios that might be complex customer scenarios, where we've seen success over the last several weeks in changing the way that they interact.
Sure, and taking off of what Anthony and Damon have said so beautifully, one of the main ideas is how to make people comfortable, the use of the right words to comfort both the customers who come in as well as your own employees who come and work in these spaces, how to make them more comfortable given the current situation. And machine learning techniques are, like as you see in this picture here, there are a large number of these algorithms that have been developed, but our approach has always been to use the best of all of these in combination to come up with a solution that is really tailored to your needs, to the business's needs. So going on with that, one of the things that has come up quite a bit is natural language. How do you understand your customer better? How do you understand your employees better? How can you address these processes, be it apps or certain processes more tailored to what these employers or the customers actually want? And in that, natural language processing plays a big role. And just to give a context, we understand very well when we speak in English language what the actual intent is. Simple things like okay to good to best, we understand the gradation in there. How do you actually get the AI to understand these nuances better so as you can serve whatever the app is or to that concern much better? So one of the things that's been developing in the AI ML field is this idea of natural language processing, where when you take words like a simple diagram that I have here, we should say, if I take a king, remove the man, and put in a woman in this place, what's the word that best denotes that transition? In our heads, we know that's a queen, but we've got to teach the machine learning model to understand that. And the advantage of running these algorithms is basically manifold. When you can just simply say, if you were to do a text information retrieval, if you're looking for a certain topic, simple example of that is Google search, right? That has natural language processing running in its background. Text information extraction in the sense of if you had a lot of reviews from different customers on different products in your repertoire, right? Which one does it target? Can we pull that out? Yeah, that's where the entity product recognition comes into picture. And a lot of it in these reviews that I was talking about also concerns whether it's a positive review, negative review. Was there something that was said? Can we make that experience better? That's where sentiment analysis comes in, and that's a large, big field within natural language processing, which actually does a whole lot of work there. Machine translation. Anthony very mentioned that in some of his apps there is a language preference as well. You might be talking in a certain language, but you want the app to kind of translate in a different way. Natural language processing comes in there as well. And finally, the idea of chatbots in the sense that we have a question or a concern that's been brought in by a customer or an employee, and a bot kind of answers that in a meaningful yet empathetic manner. And those kind of nuances are what we're trying to get into these natural language processing algorithms that understands, adapts, and gives the person what they actually want. So that kind of an approach is really awesome. We've done a few engagements in text analytics, particularly with kind of accelerating the purchase engagement with the customer, as well as the service engagement. So you see here that we actually built something which was proprietary, kind of pulled out words and phrases that kind of attuned to defining the kind of product range that a company has, but a customer would rather use something in natural language that would define that product. So how do you match those two together? Matching that speeds up the process by which you can quote that particular product to the customer. So those kind of little nuances that we add in, this is what natural language actually affords us to do, and which also makes the life of the employee pretty easy because they can process these things much more faster. So typically, one of the things that I put in here is also the way we engage with our clients is that we bring in these short bursts of sprints, 4 weeks each, but every sprint has a deliverable, something that we can give them, something tangible that they take. And each sprint adds on to that what we've built in the first round. One of the questions that we've had coming out of all these discussions was, well, all this is technology, but all this requires a platform where we have to base it on. What's that data platform that we are talking about? And what's interesting is, given the Azure Cloud Platform and the idea of low code, no code, getting things up fast, that's the best platform where we can achieve that. Mostly we achieve this in our very first sprint, setting up the environment for our customer on Azure, and then setting it up in a manner that can be added on like bits and pieces that we scale up their modern architecture. So given those advantages, wanting to come up with an NLP solution and us setting it up becomes a really fast process. It's one of the points that I wanted to mention there.
Hey Swami, what would you say that is your most favorite there when you look at that diagram, or when you talk about the natural language?
Yeah, with natural language processing, I think sentiment analysis is one of the coolest things we can see. Most people think of it as just a simple word. If they like something, is this best or bad or stuff like that. But there are a lot of nuances to it. The best example that I can give there is not good is bad or not bad is good, right? So it's that combination, and we kind of get to that stage where we understand everything in total, right? Not just single words, but a whole sentence, which has a lot of meaning to it. So those kind of approaches is what natural language really excels in, and that's the exciting part.
Awesome.
Yeah, you may ask yourself, well, why exactly are we talking about natural language processing and AI and modern data framework as a component of company Smart Restart? And this really goes to the story of customer engagement, because of the way that customers are asking or become now accustomed to engaging. These kinds of technologies have become very attainable and actually very preferred by customers versus the way they were doing business before.
Yep. One of the main points is also the amount of knowledge that we can gain out of, or analytics that we can glean out of natural language processing. And most people don't even think simple things like business logs could give us a lot more insight into what things are happening using natural language processing. That's another plus that could add on to your business insight going in the long run.
Awesome. Thank you, Swami. All right, just to kind of close this down a little bit, let's talk about, Damon, you mentioned this before. We have maybe 3-4 minutes here to finish up. Let's talk a little bit about how, the things we just talked about between the first set of apps and the second set of bots and AI relate into rapid application development and what that's meant to you over the last couple of weeks.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, I will talk fast, but I think what we found over the last couple of weeks in presenting this information out is really just there's a psychology in all of this, right? This idea of we have artificial intelligence, something as abstract as that, all the way to rapid application development, and it's really about making sure that we have a human-centered process and that we're engaging on that level, so that while we have these turbulent times, we're still able to sort of connect with people on a human-to-human level. What you see in front of you is really just how we do that. It's a bottled up process. We make sure that we understand by finding out who the persona, finding out who their personas are that we're dealing with, our clients, our customers. How do we speak to them? In order to understand how we communicate with them, either with artificial intelligence or statically through an application, we got to know who it is that we're talking about. So we go through, we understand from an empathy standpoint who we're talking about, document that, we ideate on a few things. Again, to your point earlier, this can be really fast, right? This whole process can happen within a few days' time, in a week's time, and it can be parked out all the way for a really large application too over the course of a year. So we can iterate here. We validate it for pilot groups, and then we go about building that sort of POC, and then we go right back into it so that we can output an MVP out of it. So it's really design thinking. When you take that and you bottle it up into the last few weeks, there's a few key areas that we really kind of tried to present back out. And it was this understanding of empathy and how it brings a human element into an application, so it makes it deeper. We're able to connect on a deeper level. Natural language, that sort of ties into a broader context of visual language, right? How are we connecting with the people that we actually know about through visual imagery, through the language that we're talking to them with? And just that artificial intelligence can also connect to people on that sort of with that colloquial language, natural language, and it allows us to communicate better. It makes us better communicators through our application. So some of the examples that we showed in some of the previous weeks, I think last week we showed a really good example of Starbucks doing this, where throughout the process they were closed down. Then they opened back up with their Smart Restart strategy through their drive-throughs. Realizing that the drive-throughs got overburdened, they sort of started to add that language into their applications, where they were talking to people, very, connecting with them. Hey, hello, how are you? I know the drive-through is booked. Go over to this location. So they're using artificial intelligence, just like what you're seeing here. So they're collecting data, making sure that they're adapting over time, and they're hitting within that sweet spot. What you're seeing here, another example of Starbucks doing all the right things. They have a chatbot here, harnessing AI, talking with people through that. But then they also have examples of just static text, so enhance your ordering experience. that's static. A designer put that in their application, but it's also connecting on that natural language level to speak to people. And then they bring it all together in that sort of complete package, and that is their sort of restart strategy. And then we also showed in week 3 just a simple, sort of a smaller contained version of that chatbot talking to users, just like Swami mentioned here. Great question. We're planning a phased back to work plan that places employees and then, so on and so forth. Another example in that chat log was, are you comfortable coming back? That was all the bot doing that, but doing it under the, sort of a collective configuration of knowing who that we need to target and talk to. So, and that I think that was really the fun part about this conversation was bringing that all together for everyone on the call.
Awesome. I really appreciate all of our speakers' time today. Great overview of many of the things that we've talked about in the last 3 weeks and how it's impacted companies to help them to engage. We're looking forward now to moving into our Teams as a Platform conversation next week. Please make sure that you also sign up for that. And thank you for taking time over our Smart Restart series. Again, review our blog on this topic. All of these are available for download as assets afterward. And have a great rest of your week. Thank you for taking the time to spend on these topics with us.
Thanks, Nate. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.